Senior Fellow and Senior Director for Outreach at the Middle East Institute. Very good to have you with us on the programme. As I say, it does seem strikingly similar, this American plan, to 1701, the UN resolution that ended the 2006 Lebanon war.
That's absolutely right, Christian. We have here on the Lebanese side Hezbollah very much ready to implement or agree to at least UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which calls for Hezbollah to withdraw from South Lebanon off that Israel border north of the Litani River. But the Israeli side is insisting that that's no longer enough. For them, the sense is that we've tried this before and it hasn't worked out for us. And so what the American negotiators are trying to do, what Amos Hochstein, the presidential envoy, is trying to do, is put in some implementation mechanisms that run parallel to that 1701 resolution. It would entail also a committee chaired by the United States, but also possibly France, that would then oversee the monitoring and implementation of that proposal. That is exactly where they run into trouble. That's where the sticking points are. My understanding from sources in Beirut, but also here in Washington, D.C., is that the Iranians, whose envoy visited only 3 days ago, was in Beirut, gave the go-ahead to agree to a proposal, an acceptance of the proposal based on 1701, but nothing more than that. And that's not enough for Bibi Netanyahu.
Right, because the complicating factor here, as you say, is that he has said, in fact, he said publicly, I think today, that he would continue to take out the Hezbollah threat wherever it is, even if there is a ceasefire, which does beg the question whether the Israelis are fully committed to it.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line on the Israeli side is that they have been winning. They have had the upper hand in this war so far, and they've dealt devastating blow to Hezbollah. And that's meant on the ground for Bibi Netanyahu in Israel that this war remains very popular. There was a poll that was released yesterday by Channel 12 in Israel. It shows that the majority of Likud voters, his supporters, continue to want to fight and do not want to see an agreement. And in fact, that overall, all Israelis, less than 50%, 48% of them only support such a deal. So for Netanyahu, there's an incentive to call this war, to continue this war, but at the same time, he has enough, the argument, at least what the Biden administration is hoping, he has enough, should he want to call this war off, to declare victory, to say that this deal that's on the table would push Hezbollah off the border and allow the residents, some 60,000 Israelis, to return to their homes in the north, and will have some guarantees, American guarantees involved. Really, the choice is Netanyahu's to make, and it seems that he hasn't made up his mind yet. What's at the table is not enough for him just yet.
It's difficult enough, of course, in Lebanon, even more difficult in Gaza when the end status issues have not yet been resolved. He said tonight that Hamas will not rule Gaza after the war. He says they've destroyed the Palestinian group's military capabilities. The question is, what comes after that? And so presumably the focus of a lame duck presidency in Washington, is it restricted entirely to Lebanon? Is that the only win they can get in the short time that is left to them?
That is absolutely right, Christian. It's abundantly clear. We saw that even Qatar, the primary mediator in the talks between Hamas and the Israelis, has thrown its hands up in the air and pushed the Hamas leadership out of Doha, essentially signaling that the talks are completely stalled and not going anywhere. So for the Biden administration, the hope is that there's still a low-hanging fruit in Lebanon that they can capitalize on and perhaps deliver before the end of the term, some 2 months from now. But 2 months is an eternity. Bibi is winning in Lebanon. And really what it comes down to here is that this is a proxy war between Iran and Israel. And right now, there's still a lot of daylight between Iran and Israel. The American mediator and the Speaker of Parliament in Lebanon are trying to put together some ambiguity in that text that would allow both sides to accept it and to move forward. But we're not there yet, although the Lebanon is more promising than Gaza, that's for sure.
Just one quick line of news before I let you go, Firas. This offer that Netanyahu has put forward tonight, a reward of $5 million to anyone who returns a captive that is held in Gaza by Hamas. That is the weak point for Bibi Netanyahu, isn't it? The return of the hostages. They've not been able to secure that, and politically, that is a risk for him.
that is a risk for him. But let's be honest, that's not something that's been a primary objective of his from day one. He faces a lot of protests in the streets as a result of that. But Bibi Netanyahu's objective has been to destroy and degrade the Iranian ring of fire around Israel, starting with Hamas in Gaza, but then moving on to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and possibly seeing other fronts too, the militias in Syria and even the Houthis in Yemen. So this has been a secondary one for him from the get-go. And what this tells us, this decision to offer a $5 million reward, is exactly what you and I were just talking about, that these talks are stalled, and now he's resorting to alternative options to possibly incentivize others in Gaza to try and release these hostages from Hamas and other organizations that are holding them.
For us, always good to talk to you. Thank you for coming.